Колеги, доброго.
Good morning to everyone. We are going to start the working day in the Ukrainian Media Crisis Media Center. The first briefing is the over-regulation state of deregulation of pharmaceutical market and how the Minister of Healthcare tries to dupe the Prime Minister. We have the speakers Hanna Hopko, head of the Parliamentary Committee on Foreign Affairs, who is going to join us soon. Olga Stefanyshyna, Executive Director of the Charity Foundation Patients of Ukraine, and Lana Sinichkina, Arzinger Company. You have the floor, ladies. Good morning. Thanks to everybody for coming here. Our briefing is dedicated to the most painful topic for Ukraine is medications or pharmaceutical products and the access to those. And perhaps you heard over the last few weeks the declarations of our new Prime Minister to the effect that he was going to do everything that all the pharmaceutical products become accessible and affordable to everyone in Ukraine. 80% citizens in Ukraine cannot afford purchasing the basic medications in the pharmacies. 1/3 of the seriously ill persons are beyond the threshold of poverty. People have to sell their apartments or, let's say, real estate or, let's say, the cars in order to survive. This is a really very critical situation. Last year, when we understood and realized the situation available, then we started to call the pharmacists in different countries just to compare the prices. We just took some of the medications. In your handouts, you have the list of those, and we compared the prices of those in Ukraine, Hungary, and Georgia. It turned out that in Ukraine, the prices are twice or even more than twice more expensive than in other countries. This is problem number one. Problem number two, that there are some of the pharmaceutical products which are not available in Ukraine altogether. And if you're talking about the gynecological cases, both children and adults, so hemophilia products, they are just smuggled those by smugglers because they brought to Ukraine unregistered medications, and there is a big list of those medications which are not available in Ukraine. For example, in France, they have registered about 16,000 different medications. In Ukraine, we have 9.9 thousand. So about 6,000 different medications or pharmaceutical products not enter the territory of Ukraine. We tried to analyze why it's so, and we understood that the officials in this country, those who have been involved or plunged in corruption for many years, they came up with such schematics when the pharmaceutical companies find it absolutely uninteresting, to put it mildly, to come to Ukraine. So the more papers are required from the company to bring to the official, the more money this company has to pay in the form of, let's say, bribes or any other form. This is a very cynical situation in Ukraine. Last year, we came up with the concept of deregulation when our Prime Minister, the then Prime Minister, actually had a meeting of the cabinet ministers, and he actually addressed the ministers that he has to reform the pharmaceutical market. That was kind of amazing to us. It was kind of miracle to us. All the patients in Ukraine actually were happy. About 2 weeks ago when there was a draft law registered with Minister of Health of Ukraine, which was really a progressive one, and which read that Ukraine was not going to be involved in some absurd situation or absurd dealings which were galore last year. The matter is that the medications which have been registered in the United States, Australia, Japan, and other countries, Ukraine has to verify twice. For example, this or another pharmaceutical products went through different kind of verification, but the Ukrainian let's say offices will check them or verify them for more than 12 months. Okay, the cabinet ministers registered the draft law, but unfortunately the situation was different. I mean, real situation. And last week we actually noticed some kind of substitution, I would say, that it was replaced, the draft law complete was replaced by another one. And we know that the Minister of Health, they came up with their own proposals regarding the draft law submitted by the Cabinet of Ministers, and they actually made it a void draft law. And this actually draft law is not going to affect any kind of, it's not going to change the situation in any way. You were talking about access affordability to the most required, badly demanded, let's say, medications for the oncological patients, etc. So we wanted to adhere the Prime Minister and to the Cabinet Minister of Ukraine to return to the progressive text of the previous draft law, and the wording of that, which I mean, the first one was really going to help the patients in Ukraine. Now I would like to give the floor to Lana Sinichkina, who is a professional lawyer. She was involved in this kind of development, drawing up the document related to the pharmaceutical market, and she will tell you what the Minister of Health has done, and we have different information. And after her presentation, we'll be able to answer questions. You know, I would like to improve a bit what has been said by Olga. It's not the initiative which was presented by the new, let's say, new composition of the Minister of Health. It's not going to affect to the access to the pharmaceutical market. This is going to even to deteriorate the situation. We have a special procedure for registration of some medications which are needed for the most serious disease like HIV, AIDS, TB, hepatitis, and some rare diseases. So the initiative of the Minister of Health actually is to the effect to make this procedure more difficult under the, let's say, under the pretext of the deregulation or simplification. As if, or allegedly, because they're going to introduce two elements which are going to actually to make the procedure registration of different medications the market more difficult. Number one, they are going to boil down this kind of simplified procedure only to those medications or pharmaceutical products which have not been yet registered in Ukraine. Meaning to say those medications which did not have any analog ones in Ukraine. What does it mean? They're going to protect monopolistic position of some of the medical preparations of medications which exist today in the market. And the second element which is going to create or make it difficult the simplified procedure. We're talking about a number of vague requirements which have let's say the manufacturers meet in order to register these kind of their medications. For example, the applicant has to prove that the preparation or the medication which is going, he submits the information about for the registration has to, let's say, to be produced in the country of origin, or let's say he has to prove that the instructions for the use in this or another medication has to meet the requirements of this specific country. You can imagine how many questions will be put to the applicant during the procedural registration. They will say, just prove that your medication actually meets all the necessary requirements or regulatory requirements. Prove that this is the latest wording of this water or circulation, whatever. So they're going to introduce a number of different levers which are going to be manually controlled, so to say, before they can get to the market. And we have different problems which we discuss repeatedly with the public at large regarding the concept of deregulation actually prepared by us. And some of the proposals came from some of the Ukrainian manufacturers, which is logical. They try to defend their monopolistic status regarding these several pharmaceutical products. They're not prepared for the new procedure to get to the market. What does it mean for ordinary people? Less medications, that means less competition, higher prices, and actually less access to some of the preparations, medications, or pharmaceutical products which are required for the seriously ill patients. Now we are talking about the initiative which was not on separate some individual manufacturers, but also by the Minister of Health. What does it mean? That today's composition of the Minister of Health actually lobbies the interests of some of the manufacturers instead of trying to protect the interests of the consumers and patients, instead of it's kind of decreasing the prices on for pharmaceutical products and give the necessary access to the patients to the existing market. Actually, if you're talking about this draft law 4484, which has been registered by the Cabinet of Ministers with the Verkhovna Rada, and now we can actually answer your questions, if any. So please use the arguments and facts in Ukraine. My question is, who actually the author of the initial draft law 4484, the Kvitashvili team, and actually who actually provide the wording for the second version. Actually, initially this text was provided under the auspices or axis of the regulation of the Minister of Health. We understand that was an initiative of the Minister of Health, who actually instructed the Minister of Economy and the Minister of Health to come up with this kind of draft law. I mean, the Prime Minister. And they actually came up, the Health Minister of Health, they came up as a very progressive, as they say, draft law. If I'm not mistaken, the beginning of May, it was published on the Verkhovna Rada Ukraine website. On May the 10th, the wording of this draft law was changed. We have the letter of Roman Ilik, Deputy Minister of Health of Ukraine, which actually where all those modifications, amendments were proposed to be introduced in this Grossman draft law. This was kind of distorted the first reading, the initial reading, by the representatives of the Minister of Health of Ukraine. More questions? Irina Bordarchuk, publication you mentioned that in order to import the pharmaceutical products, they have to meet different requirements and formularies, and all those are in the can be free accessible. So they have to provide. Why they should do that? The European market, like the Ukraine market, we understand that only too well, is exploited by some of the medications which are not efficient and sometimes are dangerous, hazardous to health. The protocols in the formularies are meant in order to prove the efficiency, or let's say the non-hazardous nature of the medications. If we have the open access for all the pharmaceutical products to flood Ukraine, that means that there will be a lot of inefficient or hazardous to health preparations or medications. Now, speaking about the prices for the medications, if in Europe this medication costs €100, then that means in Ukraine it's not going to cost less than that. And if we take the picture in Ukraine and Kiev, for example, I'm looking for some of the medication. I can see that the price can actually vary in different pharmacies between 80% and 100%. We have to understand how the price formation takes place in Ukraine. I mean, whether they come up with some fixed price or regulatory mechanism to regulate or to control the prices for the pharmaceutical products in Ukraine. What you can say by that? I'll start with your first question. This is kind of a myth which Ukrainian pharmaceutical manufacturers voice all the time, that Europe is saturated with the medications which are not efficient or low quality and hazardous to health. So, look here, people, it's really interesting to hear such kind of allegations. Actually, we are talking about jurisdiction. The jurisdiction rule has been actually recognized all over Europe with kind of the strong jurisdictions. They are recognized as the countries who have the best possible verification of the registered pharmaceutical products for their efficacy and, let's say, non-hazardous nature. That means if those medications have been already registered under the regulation of USA, or European, or Australia, or Japan, or I'm talking about strong jurisdiction, that automatically means that they cannot be inefficient or non-efficacious. That means that Ukrainian let's say, verification can be better than the verification those medications came through or went through in the other countries which I mentioned. If you're talking about protocols or the regulation, and you download from the internet and show it to the Minister of Health, and the Minister of Health will be happy, and they say, okay, this is you prove the effect of efficiency or efficacy, and everybody will be happy. But the matter is that we have the situation when they can put some additional questions, and the time of proving this the efficiency or efficacy of the medications lies on the shoulders of the applicant. How they are going to deal with that during the registration, we do not know yet. We can see only some of regulatory regulations and rules which are, let's say, present some risk. Speaking about the price, there is a price policy of some of the individual pharmaceutical companies the world over, and of course they established the price based on this policy and based on the market conditions. First of all, we are talking about competition in the market. What we are talking about, the regulation has to bring about the regulation in some of the sectors and segments. So we have in a specific segment, there must be more medications, more competition, less or lower prices. And the prices are most dependent upon whether we have strong competition or not on the market. And the, let's say, the costs or the, let's say, the expenditures and expenses incurred by the manufacturer to bring those medications to the market. We are talking about to decrease the kind of the prime cost, initial cost of the preparations or medications, and this means that the prices in the shelves of the pharmacy will be less. Kind of a very funny example. What is going to happen in our, so to say, simplified system of registration if they approve those norms? We have the international regulations for the procurement of pharmaceutical products, and according to one of those, the Minister of Health to register the pharmaceutical products which have been pre-qualified by the World Health Organization, which already we can actually. Which everybody trusts them. Oh, you do not trust those, even those which is registered by the WHO. Okay, we as patients, we do trust to the World Health Organization. They actually verified the different medications for 1 year based on the very specific and clear criteria of quality. And the most important, you cannot actually give a bribe to somebody to get this kind of pre-qualification, like it's being done here in Ukraine. So according to regulations of the Minister of Health of Ukraine, they actually said that the applicant, the company, let's say, has to come up with a package of different documents in order to prove that this kind of medication has been pre-qualified by the WHO, and now we see the regulation which slowed down the registration of all the imported medications. It reads that the applicant has to come up with a report of the WHO to our respective center in order to prove that this specific medication has been already pre-qualified and registered. Even myself, I do not have any kind of chance to have an access to some real big time report. I can just visit the site of the Minister of Health and see that this or another medication has been pre-certified by the WHO, but this is not enough for the officials of the Minister of Health. They, for some reason, they cannot go visit this site and make sure that this specific medication or pharmaceutical product has been preliminary certified. They have to bring everybody, everybody to bring some reports and come up with the applicant, and those applicants have to bring it to the mentioned centers. But there are some medications which were pre-certified a decade ago. You understand that the WHO has to let's say to devour a lot of different information, or to bring the report to the applicant and then to give it to the center, and it takes a number of months. During this time, the patients do not have an access to very important to their life medications or pharmaceutical products. So this is kind of how to bring to absurd situation the very simple things. We know that in this website there is a list of of the medications which have been pre-certified by the WHO, but anyway they demand to prove that it has been pre-certified, and now we have a very ridiculous situation regarding their comments or the proposals regarding the first initial warning of the Cabinet Minister's draft law. I have the question just to make sure I understand the situation. My question is: do you know anything about that in the countries with a very strict regulatory policy, United States, Canada, Japan? Do you know that? Do you know that they do not automatically recognize the certification of the medication of each other? And for example, there is a possibility whether they have the possibility to register produced in Ukraine or in India, not for the sale on the internal domestic market, but for some foreign markets. Do you know anything about the prices for the medications in the developing countries, according to which the price in Ukraine for pharmaceutical products, 14 major medications, those medications prices, I mean, the lowest in Europe, according to one of the organizations who made this kind of survey. Those prices are among the lowest the world over. We understand your question. So maybe it's because of poor quality. But if such medication is going to be registered, or they do not meet the protocols, okay. My question is, where from those medications are going to come to Ukraine? So answering your first question, naturally we cannot compare ourselves. I mean, Ukraine cannot compare itself not in terms of regulatory field or economic or political situation or the status of the healthcare in Ukraine. We cannot compare ourselves with any strong jurisdiction. I cannot comment it right away. We have to talk about legislation. Each country, they have specific legislation. They have some, let's say, rules and exceptions. The idea of recognition in Ukraine of the medications which have been registered by the strong jurisdiction, it's because the Ukrainian system in no way can, even in the first approximation, to be compared with the regulatory systems in the above-mentioned countries. That means if we are going to verify again in Ukraine those medications which have been already verified in those countries, that means that we are going to duplicate the efforts, the kind of redundant efforts which brings about increase of prices and the delay in those medications entering the market, and it makes it more difficult to enter Ukraine. And again, that Ukraine is not very attractive in terms of the economy. So if you are talking about the another verification of the preparations, medications which have been already verified in the strong jurisdiction, the jurisdiction is ridiculous. When we have a situation that our regulatory system can be comparable to the ones which exist in the above-mentioned countries, we will say, okay, let's verify all the pharmaceutical products which even come from those jurisdictions, but this is not the situation today. So let's do something to make the system more efficient in order for the patients get access to more medications or pharmaceutical products in Ukraine. Again, here is the speaker. Microphone, please. Yeah, we are talking that the simplified procedure which is being proposed, it covers only those pharmaceutical products which are registered according to the requirements of the above-mentioned countries. If they are registered, they are on sale. If the medication is produced for the export, it's not going through the verification procedure we are talking about. Please speak in to the microphone. That's why my question. Do you know about those facts? I can actually read out for those who understand the English that this allows to register medications produced in any country of the world, including Burkina Faso, not for the sales in the United States without the verification of this medication quality, but for the re-export to the third countries, not for the domestic market in the United States. So my question is, where from those pharmaceutical products are going to come to Ukraine? For example, if we had some kind of pharmaceutical company, I would register all those medications in the United States, we issue the certificate and come back to here, and I would sell those medications or pharmaceutical products as the American registered, and without going through those. If those medications are registered under this procedure, they are not covered by our registration procedure. I know that for sure. We analyzed this several months ago, so I cannot give you some details now. I can't remember. Why not? Microphone, please. Sorry, they do not use the microphone. The procedure we are talking about today, it covers only exclusively those medications which have been registered completely, fully registered in those countries, because the registration we are talking about is different from the complete registration. Thank you. Just one sec. It's very important. If you're talking about the research mentioned by the...
You are talking about civil, and this is for several weeks in press. In some editions, there was information that was shocking for us. They said that in Ukraine the prices are the lowest in Europe, and Ukrainians can buy these medicines, and this is absurd. That's why we paid attention to this survey, and we do not trust the information in the papers because they sometimes provide not correct information, and we analyzed the research, and maybe you didn't see it. Oh, you saw it, but maybe you know. And maybe you know that in that article that made this conclusion, they said that in the course of this research, they compared data for 14 medicines in 61 countries of the world during 2021 and 2015, but this is not the case. Actually, on sites in databases, it is said that they only provided data one time, and pay attention to the fact that the data is compared, for example, 2012 in Moldova, 2011 in Germany, and Moldova in other years. So in that article that you've mentioned, it is said that they took data in Belgium, but Belgium is not presented on this site. And the goal of this research was not the comparison of the prices. The journalists, they took the information out of the context. They took information and they made this wrong conclusion. And they said that these journalists, they didn't compare the prices in 1 year. And we took the lists of medicines and we called the drugstores, and we compared the prices, and we saw that these prices are low, and for each person this information is understandable for consumers, and also there are misunderstanding, and they published in this research, what they published in this research, it does not correspond to the information provided in the article. That's why journalists should compare the facts and do not manipulate the information. So we are going to end the briefing. Thank you very much and goodbye. Colleagues, our next press briefing in several minutes.